Hello and welcome to We Work Together, a new podcast about working in partnership to improve the health and care of people in West Yorkshire and Harrogate, and the relationships between the organisations and people involved. In this episode, Jo Farn, Head of People and Organisational Development at Airedale NHS Foundation Trust, talks to Helen Hirst, Chief Officer of Airedale, Wharfedale and Craven Clinical Commissioning Group, Bradford City Clinical Commissioning Group and Bradford District's Clinical Commissioning Group, about, amongst other things, partnership working and overcoming your fears.
How will we make sure partnership is everybody's job?
Even if the partnership is just a partnership with the person in the team with them, or the person in the team next door to them, or is broader and broader than that depending on where you work, there's no question that somehow we're all connected by this one aim and ambition to serve the people of West Yorkshire and Harrogate. For people in senior roles who have to go to things, they see the partnership as like an activity they have to do. But you can see, I think, over the last 4 to 5 years that people have really started to own that and actually started to feel it, started to feel that there's a real benefit and a value to meeting with, if you work in Huddersfield, you're meeting with people in Bradford, you're sharing stories of what happens in Bradford and what you could learn from. We can actually have a bigger bang for our buck. We can do a lot more if we're working across that broader partnership than we would ever do in our, if you were sitting in Wakefield, for example, where you're limited by your resources and the opportunities you've got in Wakefield. So that partnership suddenly gives you access to other resources. It gives you access to be able to sort of draw on other talent. It gives you the opportunity to draw on other expertise, to learn from failure, to learn from good. Most partnerships are just relationships between people. And they're just about people thinking, well, I need to work with more people to do my job. So I think one of our challenges is how we engage with people who work across such a big area like West Yorkshire. Have you got any ideas how we could do that?
I think there's a few ways, Helen. I think there's something in how we communicate with those people. So using loads of different ways, like we're doing now, podcasts, blogs, vlogs, written pieces to engage with different types of learning styles. So I think there's that, but I think it refers back to what you've just said about the different levels of partnership working that we've got. So I find that people engage best with things that there's something tangible for them to do, and it can apply to what they do every day. So I think there's that level of engagement and how we would connect with people in their daily work and how they're working to contribute to our partnership. Equally, there's some of the bigger set pieces that we've got, some of the programme work, and I think one of the things that we could do to have a think about better is how we enable some of those people that are doing the day job every day, contributing to what we try to achieve, to get involved in some of those bigger partnership pieces, the programmes, for example. And there's probably something about it's me or it's not me. People will see that work and think it's something bigger than them and they can't get involved with it, but actually the success of those programmes is down to how we enable our people to get involved with them. So there's a leadership question in that for me, which is around permission, forgiveness, that kind of thing, and how we behave differently as leaders to enable those people to get involved. What do we think the role of OD networks are?
I guess at West Yorkshire and Harrogate, the network that we've pulled together has been sort of quite useful in just garnering the OD capacity that's across West Yorkshire and Harrogate and trying to get people into one room that says, right, we're on this collective single mission, how do we all support each other to get there? And also I think the stuff that John and Steve did at the last network was really talking to the support that OD practitioners working in organisations need to enable them to think and behave differently. They really get sucked into their own organisations, helping to sort out a team dispute, whereas really, the best way we could use our OD capacity is around some of this sort of big transformational change stuff. So I think they really helped us think about, well, what about the OD people and how do we support them? So I think there's that. I think in places there's OD networks of some sort of description in each place, as far as I'm aware. And they're much more grounded in how they support their system in their place to function and work differently and more collaboratively. I think it's important that we keep those networks really quite broad and not disappear down a sort of people development rabbit hole where it's just all about training, and although that's important, but that they look at the system in which they're operating, they look at the way, we've used the 7S model, haven't we, as part of the OD strategy, and actually what we'd like to see in each of the places, that the OD networks in each of the places are using that sort of breadth of a model like that to really challenge how their system works and how their system operates.
So is it organisational development, Helen, or is it system development that we're working on?
I think it's both. So I think people understand organisational development because when we did the Confirm and Challenge to the programmes, everybody said, we need OD, we need more OD, we need OD for X, Y and Z. So there's like a known sort of language with OD. But the more we're meeting now, aren't we, with, either locally in our system, in Bradford District and Craven, or in West Yorkshire, the more our conversations are about how the system is developing. And it's hard to identify with what the O is in organisational development. It's like it's not an organisation. How can a system be an organisation? So I don't know is the real answer. It's maybe both.
I think it's both. Because the system is made up of organisations, isn't it? And that's where our people work. They work in those organisations. And we've talked in the network, haven't we, about where our people have their psychological contract. Yeah. So if you spoke with somebody that works at one of our health centres, they'd probably say, I work at Cross Hills Health Centre. They probably wouldn't identify with being part of a wider West Yorkshire and Harrogate system at this stage. And I don't know whether we'd ever need them to, because actually what they're doing in their practice is adding that value. But it probably is both, because there's bigger bang for buck in your words of working together, isn't there? I think as OD practitioners, those of us that have been doing that for quite some time identify with that language, the organisational development language. But certainly the more and more I do it, the more I'm thinking actually it's about development, isn't it? It doesn't matter where we do it, at what level, it's all contributing to what we try to achieve.
I suppose you just hit on something there with the sort of the person working in the Cross Hills Health Centre, and it might be that when they come to work in the morning, their partners and the team they work in are the people they need to be focusing on. But if through the thing we talked about a little bit earlier about how we engage people, actually if we could start and demonstrate how that fits within a much wider West Yorkshire and Harrogate system, because that person who works in Cross Hills Health Centre, her mum might live in Harrogate, for example. And so it would be really good if they could see that some of the work they're doing that got shared and learned across the West Yorkshire Harrogate system, that actually then improved something that her mum got in Harrogate, then actually they might see a really obvious connection. They don't need to worry about it on a day-to-day basis, but actually that would maybe give a little bit greater value and purpose. So I'm not just looking after the people across Hills, because I'm sharing what I'm doing here with the people of Bradford District and Craven, who are sharing it with people across West Yorkshire and Harrogate. And actually ultimately what I'm doing is maybe improving care for my mum in Harrogate.
I wonder if that could be one of the ways of enabling us to do that sharing piece. So I've been in the NHS now for about 15 years, and I remember that when we've talked about improvement and OD in the past, we've talked about sharing and scaling and spreading, and in my experience it's not really worked that well in the past, but maybe that's because there hasn't been that connection with actually what I do as a member of staff working in the system has an impact on me as a citizen that's receiving health and care in the system as well. So maybe we need to do more of that connect between people in their roles as workers and employees, and as in their roles as people who have families in this area. They might have caring responsibilities as well, and that might enable us to see that connect a bit better.
Yeah, I must admit there is something quite powerful. I often think because all my family live in and around Wakefield, and my husband's family live in Huddersfield, and so I often think when I'm in sort of the West Yorkshire meetings and things, I am having a greater impact on my own family than maybe I've felt in the past. Although I've always tried to put myself in the sort of the shoes of, if my mum was here, how would this be feeling? But it really brings it home to you when you know they actually are going to be recipients of that care. I think there was something else as well in what you said there. You made the point about us learning and sharing together. So I think that's been one of the big changes I've seen across the West Yorkshire and Harrogate Partnership since it was established, is that being able to just do that and not be the not invented here world. And, you know, I remember the only time you ever used to hear about something was when they were nominated for a Health Service Journal Award, and nobody would share anything until they'd got their nomination because they didn't want somebody else to pinch it. And I've seen that just go now. You know, I've seen some really good examples of where people are just like, you know, just no longer fearful about taking somebody else's idea, dusting it off a little bit, making it fit for them, and almost are proud to do so. I always hear people now saying, oh, well, you know, I got this idea from Wakefield, or I got this idea from Leeds, and it's almost become a bit of almost a badge of honour now to have taken somebody's idea from somewhere else and share it. So I think we may not have cracked it entirely, but I think we're well on the way to being able to have that maturity of a relationship across West Yorkshire and Harrogate that enables us to do that. The trick will come when somebody's in a sticky mess and is having a bit of difficulty, because our natural reaction is to go inward and to just concentrate on what's happening around you. Whereas what we need to be able to see is that people think, well, I'm in a bit of a sticky position here. What my first thought is, how do I look out to my partners? Have they been in this sticky situation and could they help me? Rather than, I'll try and fix it, and then when I fixed it, I'll tell everybody how well I fixed it. You know, getting that switch would be really good, I think.
So actually those two things are kind of getting me thinking, Helen, about what it'll look like when we've achieved some of this really quite hard to define organisational development or system development work that we try to do in our programme. Yeah. So there's definitely something, isn't there, about we will pinch with pride from each other and we'll shout about that, but we'll tweak it and change it for our local place-based context or the organisation that we're applying it in. Because there's something really important in that, isn't there? Because, you know, we work by Myron's maxims, don't we, in our programme, and you own what you create. So there is something about being able to take that idea, you know, the people that had that idea aren't bothered if you change it for your local context, and people are proud to do that and sharing that we've done that as well. So that'd be one thing, wouldn't it? And then another thing in what you've just said, I think we'll know that our programme and OD and system development is having an impact when we see more conversations happening across the system about the tough times, and we ask each other for help rather than just close our organisational doors and stick our heads down.
I don't think we should underestimate the relationships that have already been made that will enable that. And I know sometimes it can be a little bit, it's not quite as tangible maybe, but you know, and I think about the people I know now across the West Yorkshire and Harrogate system who I don't think I'd have ever known. Never mind that know them in a way I can have a good chat with them and a bit of a laugh with them, and you know, and actually feel confident to be able to sort of share with them if I was in need of some help and reach out to them. And so I don't think we can underestimate how that's the impact that could have, and then the real value it gives you in terms of being able to deliver a better care for the citizens you're responsible for.
It's good for us as people, I think, isn't it? Connecting with different people. If we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. It can feel pressured though, can't it, sometimes in organisations when you try to deliver all this stuff that we've got to deliver, and you know, come into a network meeting or something, it can be one of the easy things to drop off your diary. But actually, I know I get loads of value from connecting with people that do similar but different things across the system to what I do. And actually what's really struck me is we're all trying to deal with the same issues, and we're better together being able to work out the solutions to that, because I think we've probably got them.
I suppose the trick is to see that the network or the partnership is the place where you're going to get maybe some energy, but also the place of inspiration and sources of ideas. Because I think it is easy to sort of prioritise the urgent in your own organisation or your own team and think, oh, I've got to get this done. But if you see that the value of that network is going to help you to do that stuff that's urgent, or maybe prevent it bubbling up again. That's maybe another way we have to try and articulate, I guess, for people as part of those that still need convincing, that's part of the selling job. Maybe we need some good stories to publish, to be able to demonstrate where that's really had that impact already, because then if people can see it in reality, they can say, oh yeah, I could see that value, yeah, I will sign up.
So in that context then that we've just described, what's the role of our programme, Helen?
I think our number one role is trying to create this environment for this new way of working to flourish, really. So we've got to be really cognisant that we're coming at this from 30 years of a sort of competitive, almost transactional NHS environment where contracts have been king. We've had 16 years of things like payment by results, which have sort of driven a set of behaviours, some of them good, some of them bad, and we shouldn't underestimate the quality improvement that came with PBR. We've also had a fair long time where the NHS was quite contained to just the NHS and didn't look outside of its walls to how local authorities work with us, work on for themselves, but also work within communities. We haven't looked to other partners necessarily as often as we ought to have done around like voluntary community sector organisations or even citizens themselves and the relationship that's changed with them and, their responsibilities and their expectations and needs of services. So I think that operating context has really changed, and I don't think all of our systems and processes have changed with it. Some people's minds might have changed or their hearts might feel that they should work differently, but everything that happens for them that helps them do their job is still designed under the old way. So I think we're in that sort of space now as a programme, is really trying to work through how we can create that environment, how we can challenge some of those systems, how we can support different parts of the system to make their own changes. So the one area I'm probably more familiar with in commissioning development is, how do we support the commissioners in the system, both CCGs, but in a lot of cases local authorities as partners in that commissioning process, to work in a sort of more in the sort of planning, needs, understanding needs, designing strategies to deliver those needs, and a little bit less in the sort of procurement, contracting, performance management space, and actually doing that's not those functions shouldn't be done, but they can be done differently than how the commissioners have done them over the last few years. And I think from maybe I don't know if you've got a few ideas around sort of where providers need to be sort of developing, NHS providers specifically, I suppose, because they're the other half of that relationship if we're going to really change how the commissioning provider landscape works in the NHS.
I think there's probably some general things, isn't there? So as you were speaking then, I was just thinking about mindset shift and actually how that takes quite a long time for people, because, we're talking about changing something that some of us that have been around a while have been used to for 15, 20 years, and underestimating how long that might take us to change that mindset. I think we need to be careful of in certainly our programme, which is all about creating that new climate. So people need to go through this at their own pace, but they probably need some help. And I think that then links with the bit that you said, Helen, about the structures. We need to create some of those structures of different ways of working that move us away from some of those old kind of monopoly of provision, cultures, performance, ones where, if you've got a plan, you need to deliver that plan and kind of not look around the edges. So I think probably my comments would be more general in terms of new leadership styles that we probably need in our system that move us away from not losing some of the good things that came out of that kind of culture and environment, but taking the good things with us and adding in some of the partnership working ambitions that we've got as well. So I would say new leadership styles role modelled by everyone in our organisations will get us to where we need to be.
doing commissioning in more of a partnership space, I think, is quite helpful. I know I've seen a couple of really nice examples, one in Wakefield, for example, with their mental health partnership arrangements, where the sort of commissioners and providers are sitting around the table planning together, and they've got the voluntary sector and local authority commissioners and providers in there as well. And I think that's, a lot of people sort of say, well, we don't need commissioning anymore, but I think we do need commissioning. We just need it operating in a partnership context, not in a transactional process. And I think we've got some nice examples. The maternity partnership's another one across West Yorkshire and Harrogate, where you could think, oh yeah, that actually brings everybody together around a single purpose, and then people go out of there in order to enact what they've agreed. But maybe what we need to do is build on some of these these efforts people are making to really sort of change that environment and get the stories out of there, and then use that to sort of create the momentum behind the change where it's maybe struggling a little bit.
There's probably a skill set needed as well for some of this. We've talked about kind of systems and processes that we need in place, structures, so new types of meetings where we get different people together. We've talked about new styles of leading. There's probably a skill set that we might underestimate that's needed to enable people to work in these new ways. And that's a key role of our programme, I think, isn't it, about building capability in our people through our talent management approach and systems leadership. Because again, I don't think traditionally we come kind of fully packaged with those skills. It is probably something that we need to purposefully learn and practice to get really good at them, especially in that context that we've just described, that quite a lot of us are used to, that have maybe been in health and care for a while.
It'd be interesting with the talent management stuff to see whether we can really crack this breadth of leader idea that we've set off with. So, and I know, I think we're already being a little bit challenged with this is about your traditional NHS director pipeline. And yet, I think we're already recognising that our talent strategy across West Yorkshire and Harrogate has got to be much broader than that. It has to include the leaders we have in communities, the leaders in PCNs, the leaders in local authorities, in the voluntary sector. It's much broader than where we're going to get our next director of nursing, for example. And that's a component of it, because the world, the world as we know it won't operate without some of those key leadership senior positions being filled. But we have to look at leadership in a much, much broader context. And I think that'll be interesting as we set off on this sort of talent journey and trying to connect into the more traditional ways of doing things.
So how do we access those different routes then? So my background, I came from the NHS graduate scheme. I was really lucky to get a place on that. I was the first person in my family to go to university, so I see my kind of social background as I've been really lucky to get a place on that programme. My mum and dad always supported me loads, and they were adamant that I were going to make more of myself than they did, even though I look up to them as kind of what they've achieved and the support that they offered me. I'll certainly be doing that for my little girl. But I think I've come through one of those traditional pipelines. So how do we access those different groups that maybe aren't as lucky as maybe I was to access NHS and health and social care leadership development?
Well, I guess everybody's got a leadership story, haven't they? Everybody's got a story that says, where did they come from? Maybe we need to be capturing those. Maybe we need to be getting those out on the table and actually not just using the traditional ones. And, when you were talking, I was thinking, that doesn't sound that traditional, actually.
Does it not?
No. It sounded like there was a little bit of, you were still sort of pushing against maybe a set of expectations and norms. Because I was thinking, well, I didn't even go to university.
Go on, what were your background then, Helen?
So I just left school and got a job, as a clerical trainee in West Yorkshire County Council before they abolished it. And I didn't sort of take to university till I was sort of a little bit older, when I went to do a day release course and then finally did a master's degree when I was sort of at the ripe old age of 30-something. So, I certainly didn't have a traditional route. I've never had a plan. I've just sort of found my way into a particular job and then thought, well, that job over there looks quite interesting. I think I might go do that one. And that seems to be how I've found my way to where I got to. And always saying yes to ideas. And so, anybody volunteer to do this? And I'd say, oh yeah, I'll do it. And before you know it, you've gathered a set of skills that sort of have been useful. So everybody will have a unique story like that, won't they, to tell. And like you say, some have come up a traditional route, some haven't.
I'm just thinking about my own story, and a lot of it has been down to key people in my career that have opened doors, so to speak. Probably based on the fact that I stick my hand up and volunteer for stuff. So, I try and get to know people and expose myself to new situations and learning. But I'm just thinking now, how do we, for those of us that maybe don't network as much as other people and don't feel as comfortable doing that, I wonder how we open those opportunities up through our talent management piece to people that maybe don't stick their hand up as much, because they might not think it's for them.
Having somebody sponsor you, though, sort of take you under their wing is so important. That was what happened to me, because I'm not a natural networker. I've had to learn how to do it, but I've never been. I used to be one of those people that used to hide in the toilets till the conference started and then just slide into my seat.
I imagine that.
I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear that sort of like small talking, circulating piece. And I've never introduced myself to somebody just off the cuff, say, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so. It's just never been what I ever wanted to do. But you have to force yourself a little bit. And some people are really good at that, aren't they? Some people are really good at it. I guess what this does, though, is that I'm just reflecting on the session we had a couple of weeks ago with the BAME network and looking at the challenges to leadership. And maybe from our positions, we don't necessarily recognise what the challenge is. If you're, maybe from a BAME background, maybe it's thinking about how those leadership opportunities can be opened up and made more accessible. But also maybe looking at some of the stories that we have and maybe getting some really good role models from within those maybe more challenged areas where we don't see the representation, and getting those stories out and about and a bit more visible so people see that role model. And don't underestimate the power of a good mentor. I've mentored a number of people, and I've often said to them, what is it you want me to do? I want you to open doors for me and help me. And so, but choosing a good mentor, choosing somebody who will help you and letting them help you, I think is often another good way to be able to access maybe a route to leadership that you might not have thought of. And I think the pool that we're looking into, the talent pool, having a much broader perspective on that, like we've got in our programme, where we're just thinking sort of, well, it's almost like a pool without any sides. It's an infinity pool of talent.
Maybe our talent management programme is about recognising the talent in all of our people and drawing that out. So we all need to be talent scouts, is I think what we're saying. That's maybe part of the new leadership style that we need across West Yorkshire and Harrogate, to recognise the talent that's around us and pull that out of people and explore what they want to do with that talent.
I like that. That needs to be a new ask. That and the infinity pool of talent.
Yeah, we'll have that, definitely.
This has been episode 6 of the We Work Together podcast. Thanks to Helen Hirst and Jo Farn, and thank you for listening. Join us again next time, when we'll be joined by more partners who work together to improve health and care for people in West Yorkshire and Harrogate.